go back here. Okay, it's being recorded, so that's good. Okay, so let me try this again. Sorry. And remember to mute yourself. That'll be better for everyone who's here tonight. And if you have any questions or comments, you may post them in the chat box. We'll do our best to answer some of your questions directly in chat and others live as time allows. And if you want, you can play with the gallery versus speaker view, whatever suits your pleasure tonight. But we are very glad to have you here. I'm Chris DeRosa. I'm one of the co-coordinators of the Redistricting Issues Group for the League of Women Voters of Virginia. My co-coordinator, Fran Larkins of Fredericksburg, is also here tonight, and you'll be seeing others as well. But now let's see, I'd like to introduce you to Deb Wake, who's our president.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome, everyone. And I think that you will enjoy the hard work that went into producing this. And if you have questions, Chris, you'd like them put into the chat?
Yes, please.
Okay. Just to give you a little history, the League has been involved in redistricting for decades. And we were so excited to have the redistricting amendment pass and give citizens a chance to participate in this process. Tonight's event is one of the events that is associated with the National League's People-Powered Fair Maps. It's our national day of action, and there are events across the nation today. So welcome, and without further delay, I'll turn it back to Chris.
Thanks, Deb. So just to give you an idea, this is kind of what our agenda looks like tonight. The first part will be called what we call Redistricting 101. We're going to tell you the 5 W's, what's going on with redistricting in Virginia, who's drawing the new maps, what are the criteria for the new maps, when is this going to be done, and why is it important? The second part will focus on communities of interest. We'll try and explain what they are and show you how you can draw your own community of interest maps. And we'll finish the evening with some ideas of what you can do to take action. So redistricting is done every 10 years. As you know, the census was completed in 2020. They're still working on it. Based on the population count that they provide, the 435 congressional seats are reapportioned among the states. That information came out just a few days ago. The president has received that report, is sending it to Congress, who will then inform the states how many seats that they will have for the congressional elections next year. A few states have lost seats and a few have gained states because of population shifts. Later on this year, the more formal, detailed information from the census will come out, and states will then be able to draw new district lines. In 2021, Virginia is going to draw 3 new sets of maps: 11 congressional district maps, 40 state Senate districts, and maps for 100 House of Delegates districts. In addition, many of your local county, city, and town governments will be drawing new voting districts. So based on the census apportionment data that came out, Virginia is going to retain its 11 congressional seats. Our total population is now 8,654,542 persons. Dividing that by 11, each congressional district should have approximately 786,766.5 persons. I don't know who that half person is going to be, but it will be interesting to watch. And the numbers for the Senate and the House districts, which are smaller, are shown here. There are going to be some what they call winners and losers. I don't know if I would call it that, but because of the way population has shifted over the last 10 years, some of the congressional districts will lose, have lost population, such as Congressional District 9 here in Southwest Virginia. Congressional District 10 is up here in Northern Virginia, that has gained maybe 50,000 persons since 2011. So obviously the congressional maps will have to be drawn again so that they can rebalance the population. When you hear talk about redistricting, you also hear the term gerrymandering coming up. If you haven't met him already, this is Elbridge Gerry, who was governor of Massachusetts back in 1812. He helped to create the maps for the state assembly. And one of his maps, district maps, looked like this. People laughed at it and said it looked like a salamander. So by using his name Gerry, now pronounced Jerry, and salamander, we came up with the term gerrymandering. But Virginia, of course, was doing things even before that. In 1788, Patrick Henry, who was governor, decided to make sure that James Madison, his arch enemy, was in the same district as James Monroe when they ran for the Senate. Unfortunately for Governor Henry, his idea didn't work and James Madison was elected. Notice that the district here was not really strangely drawn. It's pretty compact and it's definitely contiguous, but you can still have political games going on no matter how you draw the maps. So gerrymandering is often described as drawing the district lines in order to favor or disfavor a political candidate or a party by selecting the voters who reside in a given district. So let's take a look at some examples. Oh, but first here's a video that we'd like you to see. So if you have the power to draw the lines, this is what can happen.
Partisan redistricting, or gerrymandering, is about fractions, percentages. These coins represent voters in an evenly divided state, 50 dimes, 50 pennies. These 100 coins elect 10 representatives. That means each voting district must contain 10 coins. Now, real people don't live in neat rows, so let's mix them up. Okay, this is our hypothetical evenly divided state. Let's see what happens if the dimes draw the maps, 10 coins in each district. For the dimes, first thing we do is pack the pennies, give them 2 safe districts, but pack them solid. The remaining 8 districts are won by the dimes, by smaller but still comfortable margins. The dimes win 8 districts and the pennies win 2. The dimes overwhelmingly control the legislature. Of course, if the pennies drew the district lines, the opposite would be true. Let's rig it for the pennies. For the pennies, we follow the same pack and crack strategy. Pack the dimes into 2 safe districts and crack the remaining 8 districts to win by the same margin, 8-2. Well, now that we've destroyed democracy, let's consider what this map would look like if the districts were drawn for compactness and keeping communities of interest together. You get evenly divided districts in an evenly divided state. Some go heavily dime, some go penny, but that's to be expected. People live where they live, and that is what democracy is about. It's not about party bosses rigging election districts so they can fix the election results.
So I want to thank Mr. Robert Millman. He's a producer of that video clip. It's part of a 30-minute video called Line in the Street, which focuses on gerrymandering in Pennsylvania. If you'd like to write to him, lineinthestreet@gmail.com, or you can go to the website for more information about the film called redistrictnetwork.org. Again, thanks, Mr. Millman. So as Deb said, the League of Women Voters of the US and Virginia have been working for fair maps for a long time. We feel that gerrymandering basically steals the people's voices when it's done for purposes of racial discrimination or to ensure the dominance of one political party. Gerrymandering runs counter to equal voting rights for all eligible voters. Here's a real life example of how the power to draw the lines can change the outcome of the election. So this is in Florida. Congressional District 4 is here. It's a heavily Republican district. In the last redistricting, they made sure that Duval County, which includes the city of Jacksonville, was drawn out of its district and attached to District 5, which is more heavily Democrat. And so the Republicans were able to try and protect CD4 so that they would not lose the election. Closer to home in Maryland, the Democrats did a good job of gerrymandering in the last decade. 60% of the voters in the last vote for Congress voted for Democrats, whereas 38% voted for Republicans. So if this were to translate into the actual congressional seats, you would think that maybe the Democrats would win 5 of the 8 seats, which is close to 60%. But in fact, they drew the maps in such a way that they won 7, almost all of the seats in Maryland. And I love this picture, but because it shows Marylanders on the steps of the Supreme Court before the Rucho case was heard. And these are cutouts of actual districts in Maryland. So they do kind of look a little bit like Elbridge Gerry's map. We have a few of those in Virginia as well. This is Congressional District 11, which looks pretty strange. It's connected by this very narrow piece of land here. It extends from Fairfax County into neighboring Prince William County. Closer to home, we have the city of Lynchburg, which until 2010 was contained entirely within one House district and one Senate district. But starting in 2011, when maps were drawn, they were cracked and split into 2 House districts and 2 Senate districts. So no longer can they work as one cohesive unit within a district, speaking to one senator or one delegate. Now they have a combination of 4 different ballots within the city. At this time, I'd like to introduce Suzanne Chambers of the Amherst County NAACP, and she'd like to tell you a little bit about her community.
Thank you. I've been about all things Amherst County for 20 years because it is a mess here. We're divided into basically north and south between the 23rd and the 24th House of Delegate districts. And I'm just going to read this to you because it helps to get a visual, the maps, but also when you hear the localities, it kind of baffles you. So House District 23, which is the southern part of Amherst County, represents part of the city of Lynchburg, one of those parts of, and parts of Amherst and Bedford County. House District 24, the northern part of Amherst County, I live in House District 24, represents the city of Buena Vista and Lexington, Bath and Rockbridge counties, and parts of Amherst and Augusta counties. And I wrote, this is gone everywhere, but that this division of Amherst County guarantees that neither party can field a candidate capable of winning a seat at the table. So Amherst never has a seat. Then we're District 22 of the Virginia Senate encompasses all of Amherst County, Appomattox County, Buckingham County, Cumberland County, Fluvanna County, Goochland County, Prince Edward County, part of Louisa County, and part of the city of Lynchburg. So when I vote for state representation, voters in the 24th, we vote with people who live on the West Virginia border, all the way east to Short Pump and up a bump north from there. Then we're CD6, we're Congressional District 6, which includes Amherst County, Augusta County, Bath County, Botetourt, Highland County, Page County, Rockbridge County, Rockingham County, Shenandoah County, Warren County, portions of Bedford County and Roanoke County, the cities of Buena Vista, Harrisonburg, Lexington, Lynchburg, Roanoke, Stanton, and Waynesboro. And with the exceptions of Amherst County and Lynchburg City, all of Congressional District 6 is on the I-81 corridor. Amherst County is on the 29 corridor. Route 29 runs through the center of our county and the town of Amherst, the county seat. Amherst County and the 24th House District are separated from the rest of CD6 by the Blue Ridge Mountains and the George Washington National Forest. This is what it looks like. This is what separates. My head's roughly a little bigger as Amherst County, but we have a mountain range and a national forest separating us from the rest of our congressional district, as well as the 24th House District. I don't know if any of y'all have ever driven on Route 60 West. It's a beautiful mountain road through switchbacks. There's a runaway truck ramp. You cannot go to a meeting on the other side of the mountain in the winter at night. It's deadly. So we're separated in more ways. We have no say on the other side of the mountain. In fact, we're referred to as the other side of the mountain. So this part of this presentation of mine was that I asked the Redistricting Commission to put our county back together and put us on our side of the Blue Ridge Mountains. We want to vote with our neighbors, with counties on our side of the mountain. That first map you showed didn't look too bad to me. It ran the 29 corridor. I liked it, but we cannot address issues that affect us if Amherst County remains divided and isolated from voters who share issues and concerns. So this is my concise, what's wrong with Amherst County and please fix it and how to do it. So thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. And so Suzanne did testify before the commission at one of their early meetings. And first one. And I think she and the NAACP followed that up with some written comments to the commission. So that's what we hope a lot more of you will be doing. So let's talk about what the redistricting will look like in Virginia in 2021 and how that's different from past years. In the past, everything was pretty much done behind closed doors in smoke-filled back rooms by a select few. To be exact, it was a few politicians, elected officials from the Senate and the House who happened to be in the majority party in those chambers. They drew maps. This is what our congressional districts look like now. And you can see that one, Congressional District 5, goes from the southern border with North Carolina all the way up into Northern Virginia, which could take possibly, depending on traffic, 3 to 4 hours for someone to travel to meet with constituents. Some of those districts, 11 to be exact, were considered racially gerrymandered by the Bethune-Hill case heard by federal courts. And these maps were drawn in 2011, and in 2019, special masters or experts were hired to redraw those 11 districts. So Virginia decided to do something different. And in 2020, Virginia voted yes on Constitutional Amendment 1 for fair maps. Nearly 2/3 of the voters voted to support this constitutional amendment. So now Virginia has a bipartisan, citizen-led redistricting commission. We have 16 members on the commission. 8 of them are legislators, 4 senators and 4 delegates, half of them Republicans, half of them Democrats. On the citizen side, we have 8 citizens. Half of them were nominated or sent to the selection committee by the Democratic leaders of the General Assembly. The other half were supported or proposed to the selection committee by Republican leaders in the General Assembly. The 16 members come from all different parts of Virginia, and it's a fairly diverse group, especially considering who drew the maps 10 years ago. Oh, Mackenzie Babichenko and Greta Harris were selected as co-chairs of the commission. They were not able to be with us tonight because of FOIA restrictions, but they did send us a welcoming message. If I can read that to you. As co-chairs of the Virginia Redistricting Commission, we are honored and excited to be leading the process of redrawing political lines that will impact the Commonwealth for the next decade. Along with the other citizen and legislative commission members, we are committed to providing a fair, transparent, and inclusive process that aims to ensure we have one person, one vote results in Virginia. We welcome and encourage your feedback and guidance as we navigate through this important and challenging work. Thank you, co-chairs Harris and Babichenko, for your encouraging words. This is a brief outline of the timeline that they have projected. They have completed phase one, which was they call their preparation phase. We are now in phase two. There was a meeting this past Monday of the commission where they looked at redistricting criteria, et cetera. The next two meetings in May will focus on the census and the mechanics of redistricting. Starting in June, they will be planning public hearings, talking about how they are going to collect information from the public. I do want to note that the commission at its last meeting created two subcommittees, one on budget and finance, the other on citizen engagement. They will also be meeting, but we don't know when or where that will happen. But the meetings will be open to the public, so stay tuned. So as I said, the next full commission meeting will be on Monday, May 10th, starting at 10 a.m. And following that, 2 weeks later will be their other meeting. And there will be committee meetings coming up. Again, we don't know what the schedule is yet. We encourage you, by the way, to attend those meetings. They are open to the public. We'll give you a little bit more information later. So talking about criteria, the Constitution now says that citizen participation is required in the redistricting process. There must be at least 3 public hearings in different parts of the Commonwealth. Our understanding is the commission is talking about having at least 6 hearings, 3 before the maps are drawn and 3 before the maps are submitted to the General Assembly. Many people are encouraging them to hold more than those 6. Also, transparency is required. All records and documents and meetings shall be open to the public. So they'll be open to full transparency, full sunshine. Maps must provide opportunities for racial, ethnic, and language minorities to elect candidates of their choice. In the Virginia Code, it states that it will be considered a violation if there is an ineffective minority of voters in a district, or if they are concentrated into districts where they constitute an excessive majority. Other criteria for maps, in no special order here, the district should be fairly equal in population. They must be compact and contiguous. They shall not unduly favor or disfavor any political party, and they shall preserve communities of interest. Another part of the legislation that is now part of the code addresses prison gerrymandering. In the past, anyone who was incarcerated in a prison or detention facility was counted in the location, in the county or city where the facility was located. Now what is happening is Virginia residents with a last known home address will be assigned for apportionment factors to their home counties. This is from VPAP. It shows where the facilities are located in Virginia. The green shows you facilities in the rural areas, orange or pink in suburban, and a few urban facilities. The larger circles represent larger facilities which have more detainees. And this graphic also from VPAP shows you what has happened if you reallocate the prison population to where they were last known to reside. So you can see on the left that the rural facilities encompass much more than half of the prison population. But when you reassign them to their home localities, the populations in rural, suburban, and urban areas are fairly balanced. So this is what the process will look like. The commission will draw their maps, and then they will submit them to the General Assembly. The General Assembly can vote the maps up or down. They may not modify them in any way. If the General Assembly rejects those maps, it goes back to the commission for a second chance at drawing a set of maps. It goes to the General Assembly again for their approval. If the General Assembly and the Commission fail to have a set of maps after 2 attempts, then the responsibility will fall to the Supreme Court of Virginia. And by code, they are now directed to appoint or hire 2 special masters or experts to draw the maps. Note that the Virginia governor does not have a role in redistricting. So the timelines for redistricting are as follows. The Constitution, it says the commission will get the census data and 45 days later, they must present a set of maps to the General Assembly. The congressional maps will be due 15 days after that. So the big question is, when will Virginia receive the census data? And we're not quite sure yet. So as we said, the apportionment data was released this week. Normally the census data is released at the end of March. We're way past that now. And it will finally be released around September 30th. But in mid-August, the Census Bureau will actually release the data in a less user-friendly format. The Virginia software company called Citygate has already indicated that they will be able to use the data when it's released in August. They will upload it to their software and to the computers, and so the commission will be ready to go. And that's when the clock will start ticking, probably mid-August. Again, we don't know the exact date. So one other point to make, there are some pending court cases. In particular, there's one in Alabama where they are challenging the way the Census Bureau is going to change identifying, certain identifying behavior when they release the data. And my mind has gone blank. I forget what the term is for that. Someone can tell you later. There may be some other, I think Ohio has a case too. So depending what happens to these cases in various courts, there could be further delay, or maybe there'll be a speed up in the release of the data. So if the data is released in mid-August, 45 days later will be approximately September 30th. So that will be in the middle of early voting for the general election, and it will be in the middle of a campaign for many seats, including House of Delegates. So it is very possible that the General Assembly may have to convene for a special session to vote on the maps that's submitted to them by the commission. Looking ahead, we have the House of Delegates running on old or current maps this year because new maps will not be available. In 2022, the US Congress will be running using the new maps. It is possible the House of Delegates will also be running again, but that is highly unclear at this point. And then in 2023, that is the usual year for House of Delegates and state Senate elections to happen. All 140 seats will be up in 2023. And those will again be on the new maps. So at this time, we can pause for to see if we have any questions. Carolyn?
None so far.
None so far, okay. All right, then we will continue. Let's see. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about community's interest, and we're going to have someone else join us in a bit. So again, if you want to, if you have any questions, start putting them in the chat. We'll do what we can.
I take it back. We have a question.
Okay.
What is apportionment data?
What is apportionment data? So apportionment is basically assigning the, in terms of Congress, assigning the seats in Congress, 435 of them among the states. So Virginia kept all 11 of its seats, but some states lost population in the last decade. So enough that they would lose a congressional seat. A few states gained population, so they are gaining a congressional seat. Hopefully that answers the question. If it doesn't, please ask again.
And also, how does the commission take population density into account?
Population density. My understanding is you just count the people. So you have, if population density in urban areas. So the districts may be much smaller there because there's so many more people packed into the district. But each district is supposed to have, each House district should have about the same number of people as any other House district. Same thing for the state Senate districts and the congressional districts.
And how will the current census impact the decisions?
The current census, and someone else can in the group can answer too. The current census basically will tell us where, if you remember the map, I think it showed that some of the congressional districts, for example, have lost population over the last decade. And some of the ones in Northern Virginia have gained population. And that also talks to density. So those numbers will have to be taken into account when they draw their maps. They have to make sure they have the same number of people in each district. And I think they're allowed to have a 5% plus or minus in their districts. So we'll go on to the next portion where we're going to talk about community of interest. You've probably heard the term. Let's see if we can explain what that is. So it's defined as a neighborhood or any geographically defined group of people living in an area who share similar cultural, social, and or economic interests. A community of interest does not include a community based upon political affiliation or relationship with a political party, elected official, or candidate for office. In addition, community of interest cannot be drawn based strictly on race. Race could be one of the issues, but there should be also a social, cultural, economic, or even historical factor that plays into drawing a community of interest. We want to point out that communities of interest can come in all sizes. It could be as big, as small as just a few blocks around your house or your apartment. It could be larger. Several community of interest could be found within a certain district. Some of them will overlap. And it's possible that you belong to several different communities of interest. And we'll explain what some of those might be in just a minute. So one of the main messages we're going to give to you today is that you need to speak up. Your community needs to be involved in defining what's important to them. We do have 16 commissioners. They are from different parts of the state, but they don't know all of the communities in the state when they're drawing the maps. And if we don't tell them what our community is like and to keep us together, they won't know. So please do plan to speak up. So let's see if Mike is here. Mike Futrell is a former member of the House of Delegates from Prince William County. He's the president of the National Black Nonpartisan Redistricting Organization, which is one of the League's partners. Mike.
Hello, how are we doing today?
Yes, with his family behind him.
Look, they make me look good. So, you know, I know how to sell it. So look, I'm so grateful for you all to be able to have me here today. So I've been sitting anxiously in the background, just kind of listening to the information as it's being delivered. And every time that I have the opportunity to be able to get on one of these calls, I always tell people, like, I feel so inspired because as I'm looking around, I see so many of the faces and the people who have, you know, been so active in this fight. And not just because it was something that was important to them, but they understood that it was something that was important to all of us. You know, a lot of times what happens is we all usually have the same general understanding of what we would like to see at the end goal. It's usually the journey of the race that we tend to disagree on. And so as we went through this fight to be able to get to this point of where we are right now, it took a lot of work. It took a lot of effort because there were other people who had their other thoughts and other ideas. But I'm gonna tell you what I'm inspired by. Because when I hop on these calls now, what I tend to notice is there were people who were in opposition, but they said, okay, it's in front of us, now it's time to go. This right here is the most important time of all of this, right? One of the things that tends to happen is we tend to set our minds on what it looks like to cross that finish line. And so often what happens is scenarios like we had happen in November where it was such a buildup. Like we had been fighting this fight for so many years. And then on election day, we were victorious and we threw up our hands and we celebrated. And we were so very excited at the opportunity that we had before us. And we were grateful for it. But you know what tends to happen after that? it becomes a bit of a letdown, because then there is this long pause that tends to happen before there's a whole lot of things moving. It's like, okay, well, you know, we did it, now it's up to the commission, or it's up to whoever it is that is to draw these lines or to do whatever it is. But this right here is the most important time out of the entire fight that we've been having over this issue right here. And I can't stress it enough, because one of the things that we want to make sure happens is that we don't just drop the ball. Any of you that have ever heard me speak know that I love to use the line, if you don't have a seat at the table, that means that you're on the menu. And the thing that I began to notice was, after we crossed that finish line on election day, we had our seat at the table. Now the next step in this leg of this journey was for us to start setting what the menu looks like. And when we start to look at, well, what is setting that menu looks like? It's making sure that our voices are heard, right? We made sure that on election day, we showed up and showed out. But now when it comes time, this is why it's important, because this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we are going to get down to the nitty-gritty of it all, and these lines are going to be drawn. And the question is, after they are drawn, is it something that we can be proud of? Is it something that is going to set the tone for the rest of the United States, right? We have a chance to lead. And what we like to say here is that here in Virginia, we are the spark that sets the wildfire for the rest of the nation. We have a chance to be a leader and to set an example here. But the only way that we can accomplish that is if each of us, and not just the people that are on this line, because the fact that you are on this line already tells me that you are staying involved. You are here because you wanted to be in the know. You are here because you're trying to figure out, what are the next steps? What should we be doing? Guess what? Now we need everybody that's associated to you. I need to make sure that your neighbors are being involved in the process. Well, you're like, well, how do they get involved in the process? The same thing like you. Well, guess what? They might say, well, I'm not going to jump on this meeting, but you know what? There are tools that we're going to be able to talk about, whether it's using Representable or any of the map drawing tools that we're going to be able to utilize, because we still want to make sure that their voices are heard. We can make sure that we're showing up to the committee meetings, because what I don't want them to walk out of here and say is, well, nobody showed up and said anything about that, right? Because that's how they are allowed to continue to operate in those things. When I was elected to the Virginia House of Delegates, one of the committees that I had the privilege to be able to sit on was the Privileges and Elections Committee. And what happened there is, I saw each and every week that there were amazing, amazing legislation that would come before us. And what would happen is, they'd host it at 7 a.m. in Richmond. Now you may say, well, what's the impact of 7 a.m. in Richmond? Imagine if it's an issue that is important to you and you live in Bristol, Virginia. That means that you would have had to drive 9 hours or 7 hours or whatever it is just to be there at 7 a.m. So that way you could make sure that your voice was heard. And then when we would sit there and we would talk about the issues that were important, and sometimes I would hear my counterparts say, well, we're going to lay that on the table, because there was nobody that spoke in favor of or in opposition of. And they use that excuse that we didn't make our voices heard as to why they weren't going to carry forward with some of the legislation and the things that we see before us. And I refuse to allow that to happen as we are building and working with this commission. Right now, we have a chance to make a difference. And it's going to take each and every one of us. And look, I love each and every one of you that I see on this line, because look, on many of Zooms, I've been able to see your screens pop up. I see names that look familiar. I see people that are working, and you'll start to notice, as I'm sure you all do, when we go from meeting to meeting, you have a tendency to see a lot of the same faces, because there's a lot of people in the fight and we're continuing to move forward. But now it's time for us to be able to expand that. Now it's time for us to expand our reach, because we are going to set the table. When I represented Prince William County, one of the most diverse counties in all of Virginia, there were issues that were important in my communities that others didn't have to deal with. Others thought were a one-off, but it was an everyday thing within my communities. And so when I think about how this commission is going to draw these lines, how they're going to, all the things that they're going to take into consideration, I want to make sure that my community is represented. And each and every one of you is an expert. I don't care if you've been in this fight for the last 8, 10 years, or whether this is your first call today. Because the community for which that you are part of, I don't care what anybody tells me, there is nobody that is a better expert on your community than you. And so if not you, then who? I need us to make sure that we are going to continue and run this through our next finish line. We are going to set a change, not just here in Virginia, but across the nation. And that all starts with each and every one of us doing just a little bit more. You're like, well, I knock doors, I put up flyers, I post on Facebook. Well, I need you to do a little bit more. Well, I gave money to it and I donated to this, that, and the other. I need you to give a little bit more. I've reached out to my friends. Well, there's still someone in your phone who needs to hear from you. Well, I show up to the committee meetings where there are people that you should be texting, say, hey, jump on here so we can talk about our community. I know that I'm asking a lot of you, but to whom much is given, much is required. We ran this race to this point, but we can't all do it by ourselves. It's time for us to start tagging other people in. It's time for us to make sure that our voices are heard. And we're going to support one another. We're going to be there for one another. You know, tag me in. Anything that we can do to be of assistance, we are here to help. Okay, so I need you all to commit today that we can do just a little bit more. So on the next commission meeting, try to log in and join. Listen, make sure your comments are heard. Sign up to speak. When Representable is rolling out their tools, make sure your communities of interest are mentioned. Make sure that you are fighting for that community. Let's go ahead and draw some of our own maps so we can help set the example. I'm not just waiting on you to do it. I'm going to give you something to work with. So I just want to thank you all. I want to thank the League of Women Voters. They have been such an amazing ally. When Phil Thompson and I started the NBNRO, the National Black Nonpartisan Redistricting Organization, what I like to say is I'm always willing to run over the hill on my own. But when you have partners and when you have a team that is willing to join you on that journey, there's so much more that we can accomplish when we do it together. And each of you are a part of that team. And I just want to thank each and every one of you, not just for what you have done and are doing, but for the things that you are going to continue to do into the future. And the people that you bring in are going to truly help us make an impact, because we're going to get this thing done. We are going to have some very positive maps that we can all be proud of when this is over. So I thank you guys so much for allowing me to be able to jump on and just talk to you briefly. But again, the talking is over. Now it's time for the rubber meet the road. Let's make sure that we make sure our actions match our talk. All right, I love you guys.
Mike, that's fantastic. I'm ready to put on my running shoes and go out there and do more. But I guess I have to stay here for a while. But thank you for joining us. You're always inspirational. It's great to hear from you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's talk some more about our communities of interest. And Mike said we got to get this done. So as we mentioned, when we talked about Lynchburg, for example, and some communities have been cracked or split into 2 or more House of Delegates, State Senate, and our congressional districts. Here in Arlington, where I live, we have a historically Black community called Halls Hill. They were actually segregated with a wall built around them to separate them from the white neighborhood. Halls Hill is now split into 2 different House of Delegate districts. So their voice has been split. College communities could be a community of interest, and we have a couple here in Virginia, University of Mary Washington. Most of the main campus is in House of Delegates District 28, but those who live in the surrounding area belong to House of Delegates District 88. And the 3 colors show that at the local level, the University of Mary Washington campus is actually divided into 3 different magisterial districts. So they're definitely cracked. In Newport News, Christopher Newport University has the same issue. My daughters went there. So in their first and second years on campus, they lived at a dorm, which would have put them in District 94. But during their 3rd and 4th years, they went to East Campus to live in dorms there. And so they had new House of Delegates member to have to get to know. Hopefully this won't ever happen in Virginia, but I thought this was very interesting. There have been cases here at the University of North Carolina in Asheville. There are actually 2 dormitories on campus that have been divided into 2 different districts. So my roommate right across the hall or down the hall would be in an entirely different precinct and different district. Other communities have a different problem. They find themselves drawn into a district that is comprised primarily of another county or jurisdiction. So this is Senate District 31, which is Barbara Favola, and she represents many precincts in Arlington. Her district extends through McLean and Fairfax County to the Loudoun County line, and it actually includes 6 precincts in Loudoun County. Some of the people from Loudoun County that I've talked to feel that they really should belong with the rest of Loudoun County. They're so far away, they're not feeling that they are heard. And that is one of the questions. Do you think that you and your community are being heard the way they are drawn into districts now? So as Mike told you, we need to empower all your communities to engage. For redistricting to be as fair as possible, there needs to be input from many individuals and communities, from you, from your friends, from other groups that you know. Don't let your community be left out or forgotten. So if you're not sure what your committee is, here's some ideas. Maybe a lot of you take great interest in your PTA or your school community. Your church community could be another to consider. Some communities may share cultural connections. And certainly there are shared interests in different parts of the state in jobs, the economy, healthcare, or environmental issues. Coal miners, for example, and their families may be very, very concerned about the jobs and access to good medical care. If you live near the ocean, the bay, the lakes, or the rivers, perhaps you're concerned about the quality of the water. That could be your community of interest. Does your community lack access to good medical care? Maybe you don't have a hospital. I think Patrick County lost their hospital recently and have to drive a long way to get to good medical care, especially in an emergency. Are you stuck in traffic all the time? That's probably most of us. If you're in one of those corridors, you may want to get a group of people together to talk about it. Then we have things called the food deserts. This shows Richmond on the left and Hampton on the right. The areas in red are communities where there is not a major grocery store. So that means the residents do not have access to fairly priced, fresh, healthy produce and food. There's a lack of jobs, which grocery stores could pull in, as well as income for the municipality. So perhaps if you live in one of those areas, that could be your community of interest. So basically you define your community of interest. It might be shared interest, needs, you might have common goals or a shared history. So before we go to the next part, you might be wondering, or some of your friends may wonder, well, who are my representatives? So if you go to who'smy.virginiagenerallassembly.gov, you type in your address here on the landing page, and it will give you the names and contact information for your state delegate, your senator, your member of Congress, and of course, we all have the same 2 senators, Tim Kaine and John Warner. If you click at the little blue bars at the bottom, it will show you the boundary map of your district. And you can see where you live in your district and see whether that's the right place for your community to be. So who's my is where you should go. All right, so are you ready to draw a map of your community of interest? If so, you can pull out a sheet of paper and your colored pencils and get started drawing maps. Or if you'd rather use a technology, we will introduce you now to 3 free tools available to you. Dave's Redistricting app, DRA 2020, Districtor, which comes out of Tufts University, and Representable, which comes out of Princeton University. So Dave's Redistricting app, again, is free. One thing that's interesting there is that you can take a look at the current seats or maps for House of Delegates, State Senate, and Congress. And on the left, you can see that it provides population data. You can get other analytics there in terms of partisan leaning, demographic breakdown by race, etc. So it's an interesting map to look at. Dave's is unique too in that you can actually start drawing your own maps. Here I attempted to draw some state Senate maps. I started in the southern area and I stopped because of lack of time, but also I realized that this was not very easy. And on the left, as you're drawing your map, you can see how many people are in each district. So that's if you want to draw the entire map of the state. So I'm going to turn the next part over to Peggy Lane, who belongs to the League of Women Voters of Montgomery County. She's going to walk you through Dave's redistricting app and districtor. And then we'll hear from Fran Larkins of the Fredericksburg Area League of Women Voters, and she'll be walking you through Representable. So Peggy.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to try to do a little live demonstration here. I'm just pulling up my browser window so I can go to Dave's redistricting app and see if I can share my screen. And Chris, you'll let me know if it's not working.
That's good.
So this is davesredistricting.org. And this is probably the most complicated of the 3 tools that we're going to show you. And I just want to emphasize all of these tools are free. You just plug them into your computer browser and you can go and start playing around. Some of them, Dave's, for instance, if you want to save a map, you need to create an account. So I've created an account and saved a map using Dave's redistricting app. Districtor, you do not. And Fran is going to talk about Representable. So I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes sort of showing you some of the features of Dave's, starting out with Virginia. It will show you, these are the existing maps for congressional districts and state Senate and state House. And if you scroll down, you can also see maps that other people have made, and they could be organizations or just individuals who've gone on to the website and created the map that they wanted. And then one of the really powerful things about Dave's is that it has an evaluation algorithm. So it will rate your map on several different criteria, and I'll show you a little bit how that works. So these maps have come out, have scored high on some of the criteria that are available in Dave's. So this version has the most evenly divided population. It's the most proportional. This one has the most competitive races based on what we know about voting patterns in the state. This version has the best minority representation. These districts rate highly in compactness, and this map has the least amount of splitting, and that means that counties and cities and precincts are kept together to the highest amount possible. And it gives you also some additional resources that you can go to for more information. So I'll show you where you can find some more maps. I have taken my first attempt at drawing congressional districts for Virginia. And what that taught me is that it's really hard. You know, it's easy to criticize existing maps and say, well, Lynchburg should all be in one district, Amherst should all be in one district. I'll show you what Montgomery County, where I live, looks like. We're currently split into 3 House of Delegates districts. But when you actually dive into the nitty-gritty and start trying to balance and keep those localities together and try to meet some of the other criteria, it is not easy, folks, let me tell you. And I'll just show you how poorly my map scored on the analytics. So I got the population divided fairly well, although not well enough according to court criteria. I was more than the allowable variation in population among the districts, but I did not score very well in competitiveness or compactness. So this also gives you more detailed descriptions of what those things mean if you scroll down. I'm going to go back to the beginning and just show you what you can tell about Virginia if I look at the existing state House of Delegates districts. I can add some existing information and you can look at county lines so you can see how the districts are split across counties, or the counties are split across districts. And I'm going to zoom in just here to my home locality. I'm here in scenic Blacksburg, and you can see that this area is Montgomery County, and we're split between 3 different House of Delegates districts. We've got the 12th, and I think the 7th, and maybe the 8th over here around the county. And if you zoom in farther, you can even look at how within the town of Blacksburg, we've got precincts that are split. If you look over in this right-hand column, it'll give you the details on the precincts that precincts are split between different districts. So that Dave gives you a ton of information. It's a little bit overwhelming. So, but it really does give you an appreciation of the amount of effort it takes to really try to draw fair districts. And I'm just going to show you one other thing here on Dave's, that you can look at other maps. If you set up an account, you can save your map and you can look at what kind of maps other people have drawn with this tool throughout the country. And a lot of people have been using this tool. You can see these are maps that were drawn today and this week of different attempts by different people here to draw districts. And people, you can give them names and give them different attempts. So here's one that appeared to get a fairly high rating on some of the scoring analytics that this individual created for the congressional districts in Virginia, and managed to score a little bit better than I did, but not a whole lot better than I did. So that just gives you an idea of how difficult it is to really draw fair maps that meet the defined criteria. I think that's all I wanted to show you about Dave's. So I'm gonna, and we can come back to it if people have specific questions and we have time, but I'm gonna go on to Districtor, which is a different tool which allows you to, again, draw districts if that's what you want to do. And it also allows you to draw communities of interest. So if you don't want to get into all the nitty-gritty of drawing a district, but you want to send a message to the Redistricting Commission that Amherst County should all be in the same Senate or House of Delegates district, or Montgomery County should be represented by the same delegate, then you can draw a community, and you can it saves it and gives you a link, and you can send that link to whoever you want. You can send it to members of the Redistricting Commission on their website. So this is a free public tool. It gives you some background about how it was created, what you can do with it, how to use it. And I can start with Virginia. And it asks me, do I want to draw districts or do I want to draw communities? So I'm going to draw a community. And census data is reported in what's known as block groups, which are just small areas that contain people that are counted by the census, and they're generally smaller than a precinct. So if you're familiar with your locality, you know where you go to vote in an election, that's usually for your precinct, located in your precinct. So I'm going to try to build a community of interest in Virginia out of precincts. So it gives me this background. I'm going to zoom in on Blacksburg. I don't want to go that far. And what I really want to do So I want to see counties. So this is showing me different things. I want to see the county boundaries. There they are. And then if I want to draw a community, I can give it a name. And I select the drawing tool. And then I can just hover over these areas and click on them and identify the community that I want to draw. So I retired from Virginia Tech. That's a major employer here in the New River Valley. So I'm going to include in my community, I know that people commute to work at Virginia Tech from Giles County and from Pulaski County and from Floyd County, as well as Montgomery County, Blacksburg, and Radford. So I'm just going to go and click on all of these geographic areas within that community and draw myself a community of interest that includes 4 counties, city of Radford, the towns of Blacksburg and Christiansburg, and I'm going to call that my community. So if I wanted to, I could give it a name and write a description that these areas include where people who work at Virginia Tech live. And if I wanted to save it, I could share it and I could then copy this URL so that I could send it to the Redistricting Commission and say, I want to be grouped together with these communities when you draw the district lines. So, and if I decide I change my mind, I can click on the eraser and then I can go back and take out some of these areas. So you can draw these. Oh, then I want to, now I erased too much, so I'm going to go back and fix it. And then I can update it. So with Districtor, you can make these areas as big or as small as you like. So if I decide that's not what I really want it to do, I just want to zoom in here on Blacksburg, and I'm going to look at, I'm going to drag this over here, and I'm going to draw a much smaller community of right here, just around Blacksburg. I can do that, or whatever I want to do. So that's the short and sweet on Dave's redistricting and Districtor, and I'm going to stop sharing so that Fran can move on to representable. And if we have time, we can come back and talk about those some more.
Thanks, Peggy.
Okay. Let's see here. Peggy, I don't know if you have to stop or maybe it's going to go to, hold on, let me go to view here. I'm on speaker view and not quite sure how to get over.
Click on this, the green button that says screen share.
Yeah, I did, and I've got it pulled up here. So I'm clicking on my screen, but I still see your picture. Is what I don't understand. Okay.
Because I quit sharing.
Okay. You don't need to see my beautiful face anyhow.
There you go.
As long as everybody can hear me. That's the important. That's the important.
We can see you and hear you.
Yeah, great. Okay. I am actually going to do a live demonstration of representable and show you all how easy it is to use. But what I'd like to do is start off first by introducing you just a little bit to the area of Virginia that I live in. We moved here to Fredericksburg about 10 years ago, and one of my first questions was, where do we go to vote? And who is my congressman? And who's my Virginia delegate? And also, who's my county supervisor? Well, what I learned is that we were actually in the 88th district. And of course, you can see here how it has a lot of zigs and zags in it. But where we moved to was right here off of 95 and Route 17. So we were right here on the edge of what actually is the 28th. The 28th district is in this area, but there's a carve out and it comes up in actually into the 88th. And this gives you a little bit more of a, it gives you a little bit more of a close up of what was happening. not only do we show you that the 88th and the 28th were split, or what split the city of Fredericksburg, not just University of Mary Washington, but of all of Fredericksburg. But then it also split our communities that are up here off of Route 17. And I actually live right here about where it says 670 in a community called Celebrate. So I just wanted you to see what we are dealing with what we call the thumb. And what we're asking for is the thumb to them to do away with the thumb so that everybody that is in this area are represented by the same person. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing long enough to share my screen again, and I'm going to take you into representable. Okay. I think you said we've been talking about how all three of the tools that we've been showing are free. And this one is particularly easy to use. You don't need to worry that you're going to break anything. You can delete it at any time and redraw it. And the interesting thing about representable is that it focuses solely on drawing communities of interest, but there is no data associated with that at this point. I don't need to worry about telling them how many people actually live in my community or the community on the other side of 17. The important thing that I am telling them is what they need to know about our community and why we feel like the maps could be more fair. So in order to do that, representable, I'm going to walk you through exactly how we do it. It's very, very easy. As you come into represent, we just click on the first. There will be things in here that you can take a look at, videos that they've created and further instructions. I'm just going to add my community. And then I'm just going to come over and I'm going to select Virginia. Again, interesting and good information on the left, including Virginia's redistricting criteria, the legal definition for what a community of interest is. And as soon as I'm finished, we'll come back and see community maps drawn in Virginia here, which are very interesting to look at. But when we come back, it'll include the map that we are drawing right now. So I'm going to start mapping. You should put all of your information in here right now because there's so many people that have access to watching this. I'm just going to put in my name, which is Fran Larkins. And to make it quicker, I'm just going to put a couple of characters in here, which will allow me to go on to the next piece that we're working on. But when you all do this, please include your information. They guard it very carefully, but what it does is it makes them, they know then that you are not a bot. You're not coming in to disrupt the tool. And it's also good because you will have an opportunity to share your map to one of the mapping drives that are being created across Virginia. And when you do, such as the League of Women Voters redistricting map, we need to know how to get in touch with you. So that's why that information is there. Again, it talks about what a community of interest is. It's a neighborhood or an area you live in. Here where it says the people you would like to choose representatives with, that's not asking you if you are a Democrat or a Republican or an independent. What it's saying is does your community not want to be split? Do you want to have just one representative? That's an example of what that is. And then the third one, of course, is a local group that's brought together by a common interest. Well, what are these common interests? Representable, actually, before you start drawing the map, they talk to you, they want you to talk to people in your community and work through it, what it is that makes your community unique. Why are you concerned about your representation? And so this is where you are able to tell the commission about your community. And if you click on the little down arrow, it will actually give you some examples of some questions that you can answer about community activities and services. One of the things that I recommend is that when you are working on this, when you answer the questions, answer them in a separate document so that you can move this around quickly and go in and you can copy that and then come back and very easily put it into the box. And what I am saying, now there is a limit. You can only have about 75 words, so you're not going to be doing a whole lot of writing. So you want to pay attention to give the best information you can in here. And what I'm telling the commission is that celebrates an active adult Del Webb community. We have over 1,000 homes in Southern Stafford. We have a community lodge, but we also use our community resources such as the library and attending churches. We don't have a problem with healthcare. We have access to Mary Washington, a good choice of doctors. And then I complain a little bit. We have grocery and drug stores as well as big box stores close by, but we really wish for other shopping and dining options. But that's just so that they get to know what our community is. Then I'm going to talk to them about cultural historical interest. And again, it gives you questions that you can answer yourself or you can talk to your neighbors. And let me copy and paste this one. Back in again. And one of the fortunate things about the community that I live in, the thing that we really love, is that we are multicultural community of retirees or wannabe retirees from many different regions of the United States. And we do appreciate living in a town and gown community with the University of Mary Washington. And of course, Fredericksburg, such a historical area as well. So that's a little bit more about our community. I'm going to ask, these are questions about, well, where are people employed? Well, we're fortunate that at this point, most of us are not employed. We're retirees, but let me pull up what I've said about that. I'm hoping that when they read this, they will get a true picture of our community. Okay.
Fran, do we have to answer all the questions?
You only have to answer, technically, you only have to answer one question to be able to go on to the next part of the tool. However, it is well worth your time to answer all the questions, because then you will have, the commission is going to have a much clearer idea of what your community is like. I've said most of our residents are retired and over 55 years of age. We enjoy our proximity to the Rappahannock River. We're a lot of gardeners. We participate in environmental organizations. And our only environmental concern right now that I'm aware of is noise pollution. We get that from I-95. So at some point we may need to have some barriers put up for that. And then we're divided on the loud summer concerts that are on the other side of the river. We've got a new baseball stadium that are in over there, but a lot of us with these loud summer concerts, we just bring our lawn chairs and we go out and we sit in our driveways and we enjoy the music for free. So, but that again gives you just a little bit more about what our community is like. Now, the community needs and concerns. I think this is a really vital piece that you want to answer, because you're telling them we're a community with shared policy concerns. We have issues with how our lines are drawn. And so this is the last little piece to put in. Now this does take some time. The rest of it's so fast, it's almost ridiculous. So, okay. And the very last one to go in. And this is my ask. This is what I need the commission to do for us. Route 17 is our main street, and we have concerns about heavy truck traffic, too many auto parts stores, and a lack of quality restaurants. Celebrate residents would benefit from being in the same district as other communities along Route 17. When the 88th House District was formed in 2001, however, there was a carve-out around the 28th District. At that time, our community was undeveloped. We weren't even here. We now have over 1,000 homes, and it is time for us to be included with other communities along Route 17 and lines to be redrawn, so we are. So that's the 4 questions that you will want to prepare and have ready or answer before we go on to the next step. I'm going to name our community as Celebrate in South Stafford. Sort of a description, a little bit of a description of where we are. I'm going to put in my zip code, and this is very much like using Google Maps, and we're going to zoom right in. And I'm going to back out just a little bit so you can see where we are. We are along 95. We're to the north of Fredericksburg. Here's the river. Here's the ballpark on the other side. So it is as the crow flies. Now, when I click on this, the gray area that you see is actually a census block. We cannot divide it any smaller than that. The census blocks were determined several years ago by the Department of Census and the county or your jurisdiction where you are. They worked together on determining how we were going to do the census blocks. For 2011 redistricting, this census block here actually went across 95. But the county decided that they did not want to have any districts that cross over 95 at this point, which actually works to my community's advantage. So I'm going to click on this one. I'm also going to click on the one that's just to its north, because you can see there is a development in here, which is another senior over 55 community. So I'm going to click on that one. I want to pick up the areas that are along Route 17. Again, much smaller. It's a much smaller area than a lot of the things we've been looking at. But this is my community, and this is what you should do for your communities, is to show them what brings you together and what you need them to do for you. If you want to go in just a little bit, you'll be able to see that, oh, here's the Giant, and here's the Weiss Market, and here's the Holiday Inn Express. So you do get to see some of the landmarks that are in your particular area. So that is what I want them to see, because it shows we want to be all included in this along 17. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And at this point, you're going to bring up your privacy and your terms of use. Please, please read both of those. I feel very comfortable with that. The other thing you need to know is that it's submitted communities are final, but what it means is that you can't go back in and edit it, but it is very easy to just delete that one and create a new one. So don't worry about it. It's final, but it's not final. And I'm going to click on I'm not a robot. And then I'm going to submit. And ta-da, I have put together my community of interest map. It's as easy. The hardest part, or the most time-consuming part, is answering the questions. But the mapping itself is very, very easy. And I feel like you've got a really good product to get to the commission. You can export this as a GeoJSON and then go on, which is a geographical format. And then you can actually use that and go and use what you've done right here in Dave's redistricting app or Redistrictor, or another one called Maptitude. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to export a PDF so that I can send this on to the commission. And I can actually download the map, and I'll have a PDF that I can use to send on to them. But one of the things I really like about this is that this point, once you've done your map, you can use data layers, and I can show with these data layers where my house district is. And from this, you can see that the 28th goes up into the thumb. And what I want to do is do away with the 28th and have all of our communities here together. Either make it all the 28th or make it all the 88th, but don't leave us out down here, because that is what's been happening. Once the census information arrives in August, they will put a limited amount of demographic information in here. But it doesn't matter, it shouldn't matter for my community of interest how many people actually live in here, because if we're talking about creating a district, the district are going to be much bigger than that. So we shouldn't have the population. It's important for the size of the districts, but it's not important for a small community of interest like that. I want to also show you that all of the information we put in is going to be right in here. So you can go back and you can take a look at that. I would, one of the things that would be really good and be very helpful is you can submit this map to an organization in Virginia. They did a big map collection down in Richmond. They did One Virginia has a mapping drive, and our League of Women Voters has a mapping drive, and that's the one. And there will, if you don't want to use one of these, you can talk to Representable about creating your own mapping drive for your community, however you want to focus on that. So I'm going to submit that. And that is basically it. Now I will probably download the map PDF, and at some point I may appear and have individual testimony before the commission. But I also know that this information is going to be part of the League of Women Voters mapping drive, and that information is going to be analyzed by the by Princeton, by the gerrymandering project at Princeton. So it will be presented in an even more easy to use way for the commission. Now, if you're not quite sure what maps you've actually drawn already, you can go into my account and go to my communities. And here it brings up my Celebrate in South Stafford. If I had done more than one, it would have brought it up. The other thing that I want to show you, if you click on representable and you go back to the beginning, you can click on, it's just 3 clicks. You click on get started again. You'll come down, add community, and go back to Virginia. And take a look at see community maps drawn in Virginia. Because you can actually see the maps that have already been drawn in Virginia. If you take a close look, you can see the little map that we just added here. There have been some big maps that there have been maps added around Richmond. I think there was one map that somebody added that was almost the whole 5th district. So you don't have to go small, you can go big with this. And then the list of these, are along the left-hand, a list of the ones that have been added. At some point, hopefully we'll be able to click on these and go right to them. But what you need to, if you want to take a look at some of these are really, really good. Let me just do, you can use Control F and I'll type in Celebrate. And it brings you right to the Celebrate in South Stafford. It shows it to you. You can print it out a PDF if you want. It tells you about all of the things that we have filled in. The other good thing is that nowhere in here does it show you my name. So I think it's, well, it's important for perhaps the league to have it so that, because I've submitted it to their mapping drive, it does not, the public does not have access to that. And when you get, you can also take a look, once you're in here, you can actually take a look at the State House districts again. There's some very interesting ones that are in here. One of the ones, let me do, finish up here. One of the ones that I found very, very helpful or very interesting to look at is the community of Monticello. Monticello residents actually did their own mapping drive. They did not put anything in, so you can see here it's outside of Charlottesville. They did not put anything in the community activities and services or the cultural historical interest, but they did talk about the economics, that they are a bedroom community of Charlottesville, and they want to be included in Charlottesville for redistricting purposes. And they also talked about that under community needs and concerns. So you might like to go back in and take a look at what other people have already submitted, but keep an eye on what's going on, because we're hoping by the time over the next couple of months, like Mike said, we want to have this whole map filled in of everybody drawing their own communities of interest. So Chris, I'm going to turn it back over to you. The only other thing I would say is that the League of Women Voters stands ready to help you all use representable and draw your maps. So call on us, because we're here to do it and we want to fill this map up and let the commission know about communities of interest. Thanks. I will stop sharing.
Thank you very much, both Fran and Peggy. I learned a lot just watching both of you with your demonstrations. So I know the time is getting short, so let's see if we can just kind of finish up quickly. We'll try to get to any questions.
The one question I've seen is, to what extent would a community of interest turn into not in my backyard, become exclusionary instead of inclusion?
Well, I suppose it could. Does anyone have anything to say to that?
Chris, we can't hear you.
Oh, does anyone have anything to answer to that question? My response was it could end up that way. You'd have to justify why you want your community kept together, though.
I think you also have to remember that your community of interest, for the most part, is going to be one small portion of any district. So Yeah, it might be a very homogeneous group, but it's going to be next to a bunch of other communities to build up to the population necessary for the district.
All right, thank you. So we'll finish quickly with what can you do now? As Mike Futrell said, don't just sit there. Let's get going. So we encourage you to attend the commission meetings. If you have not attended before, go to redistricting.dls.virginia.gov. Click on the information and background. It'll show you the meetings that are there. You'll find recorded meetings, recordings from previous meetings. Public comments that have been sent are published there. If you download the agenda, it will give you the link to the meeting if you want to view. There's also a link where you can sign up to speak if that's your choice. You can also just submit written questions or comments by using their email address. So what we'd really love for you to do is for you to go out and draw your community of interest map. Invite friends to join you or neighbors if that would make it more fun. Play with Representable or Districtor or Dave's redistricting app. Play around with it till you feel comfortable. And if you decide to have a map drawing party, I think that'd be really fun. If you'd like one of us to attend to kind of walk you through the steps or guide you, we'd be happy to be there as your support. And if you'd like additional training for any of your groups or your neighborhoods on drawing your community of interest maps, or possibly in the future, we might have something about preparing to testify in front of the commission. And spread the word, tell everyone about it. We are recording this. You'll find this on our YouTube channel. If you go to our website, LWV-VA.org, we have our redistricting blog. Sarah Fitzgerald is excellent at putting up-to-date information there, summarizing commission meetings. She also summarized the census apportionment data that came out this week. Our partners also, One Virginia 2021 Foundation has a lot of good information on their website, VPAP as well. If you want to email me, my email is chris.lwv.222@gmail.com. We'll be happy to answer any questions or help you organize your map drawing party. These are the, I think these are in chat as well, and we'll send it in a follow-up email after tonight. So remember that your voice matters. It's important for the commission to hear from you. As Mike said, if they don't hear from you, they're just going to go ahead and do whatever they want to. And again, as he said, we want a seat at the table. Be sure you're there before they dish up the district pie. We want them to hear from us. We don't want to be on the menu. We want to help set the menu. So thank you again for coming. And I think that's it. Do we have any other questions or?
I would like everybody to know that we have a redistricting blog on the League of Women Voters of Virginia website, and we can certainly add more information in response to your questions.
And for anyone who wants to stay at this point, I guess if you'd like to ask a question out loud, we can probably do that too. Do we have any other writing in the chat?
Are we sharing the slides?
Yes, I think we'll put them in a PDF format and we can share the slides if that would be helpful. And I think the chat automatically saves, right? Do we have everything saved? Anybody else have anything else? Oh, Deb says yes.
Chris, I just wanted to mention that the representable slides, representable was live, so it's not on slides. But
Right.
Please.
But it's on the recording.
It is on the recording, you're right. And we're happy, just let us know and we'll be there. Love to help.
Play Chris's song again. Can you hear it?